Hello, everyone. Welcome to this week's Digital Dialogue series. My name is Tawana Bain. I am the founder of the Derby Diversity Business Summit. And today we are talking how to reopen, go back to work when you are navigating different sides of the aisle. I have some fabulous guests here on with me. We are going to figure out how you do it and how you do it well. So we're going to
Lost you there for a minute.
We lost your sound there.
Oh, we lost. Oh no, we lost the host.
Yeah. Normally it's one of us, right?
This is the start of what makes this a challenging coming back to the workforce.
Right.
Technology, right? Technology.
Can we figure it out?
That's the number one right now.
So we can go ahead and do intros. I know we just got the message here, and if you don't mind, I'll just get it started. Stephen Hightower II. I'm Chief Operating Officer of Hightowers Petroleum Company. We're a wholesale distributor of gasoline and diesel fuel across the country. Third generation business. Our family began in 1956 from my grandfather. My father began into the petroleum business, and I've now been in that in my role for about 10 years now, and are introducing the fourth generation. So definitely, during this time, to be able to see, to hear and experience all the challenges that our family has been through in business, this is certainly as unique, if not the most unique, that we face. So it's definitely good to be able to share with our fellow business leaders in the community what's going on.
Thank you, Steve. My name is Daryl Hammett. I am COO and General Manager of Connexus, which is a Coupa company. We were recently acquired by Coupa on May 1st. We were excited not only as being a minority-owned business, focusing and supporting on suppliers and helping diverse suppliers have and gain opportunity to more business in the corporate world. Very, very proud to be here and in support of the discussion today. And thank you. Looking forward to the discussion.
Yeah, thank you, Tawana. My name is Jason Lopez. I'm the Chief Executive Officer of Nano Pharmaceuticals. Nano is establishing a revolutionary line of pharmaceutical formulations and devices to create a new groundbreaking pharmaceutical and nutraceutical standard within health and wellness and nanotechnology. I served over 10 plus years in the United States military special forces, leading multicultural workforces in war-stricken countries, aiding in the development of Afghanistan and Iraq economic and socioeconomic initiatives. I've also developed and led in training programs for NATO armed forces in preparation for combat missions. I've been also recognized for an extensive involvement with the disabled, honored with 3 Army Commendation Medals for heroic and life-saving acts of bravery, and recognized also for rural economic development in war-torn countries, which is definitely a lead topic in diversity. That has led me to becoming the newly appointed CEO for a company by the name of Zodiac. Zodiac is a stablecoin and payment processing platform built on blockchain technology. In a time of severe economic inequality, Zodiac's mission is to really support the financial inclusion and decentralizing and banking in large number of households that are underbanked or unbanked. I believe that Zodiac will provide these households with a safe haven platform to pay, save, invest, and ensure their future. I really believe that all of us together, we need to understand our differences in which will foster new socioeconomic growth, and that will have persistent perfection by research-backed innovation, which will, I believe, ultimately lead to health and prosperity for generations to come.
Well, thank you guys, and certainly while Tawana's out for a minute, we can continue the conversation. And I was having a conversation with her a couple weeks ago, and we were just talking about everything that's going on in the world, and what from a business perspective, how are we coping with this, and how are we adapting? I think you always hear the term new normal, or waiting for it to be over, but as business leaders, we have to sort of see around the corner, and not only, so we got the sort of the twins of disruption right now with the COVID and the social justice movement. And I think today of all days sort of encapsulate that, before the end of our work day, we've seen it with the death of Herman Cain, something that, has been, publicly, sort of on the side of no masks, and, sort of that side of it. And, that brings that home, and also the Congressman Latham that was recently infected, but also the burial and the funeral of the late great Congressman John Lewis. And in fact, I was up until the last minute listening to the eulogy of such a great and powerful man. And so today sort of the perfect day for us to sort of debrief on that and see how we are, how has that impacted us personally, and how as business leaders do we plan on going forward. So Jason, if you have anything in that.
Definitely, Steve. I think, you're really hitting the nail on the head, here. COVID-19 has really impacted, all of us, not only in business, but in our personal lives, and then affecting, our kids and the schooling system as a whole. So I think it's impacted us in such a unique way that I feel like this is that time to really, take this, matter and really understand where are some of these major areas that we now see as business leaders, as people within our community, and how do we start, laying out some of these new foundations. One of the big areas along with this is ethical policy. I believe, one of the big topics was prison reform or defunding police in some of these areas. I believe in ethical, policy and political reform. I believe if we eliminate the incentive for law enforcement to incarcerate the innocent, and we look at how we can stop injustice, I believe that's where we really start, and where this, COVID kind of pushed these matters into the light. Not just for business leaders, but for us people, all the way across the board.
Very good point. Tawana, did we have you back, or?
Yes.
I'll shift it back to you.
And I want to make sure that I didn't miss anything super critical. Sorry, for whatever reason, my sound decided to exit stage left. But I want to make sure that I didn't miss anything super critical. And I do want to really set the stage on why this conversation is so important. Everyone has had the opportunity to introduce themselves. But the reality is we've been at home. We have been away from our colleagues. So we've been able to really deal with a lot of the different conversations that are playing out behind the scenes. But we have to go back into work. And today, the conversation of race is being widely had at work, which is not typical, right? And so now many people have begun aligning race to politics. And so how do we ensure that when we get back to work,
I think we lost you again. So, part of what—
Can you hear me now?
There we go.
Yes, no.
Yes.
Okay, Tawana, you back?
So we could just hear you at that moment.
Me? You got me?
I can hear you. Go ahead, Daryl.
Okay, good. Not a problem. Okay, gotcha. All right. I was just wondering, was Tawana, okay, so it looks like she's stilled out. But, here's what's very important to me, and I've had a lot of conversations. Oh, okay, Tawana, you're back, but I'll just finish. Let me give you a take on it from my perspective. I think there actually have been a lot of good things that have come out of the last 90 days. Since March, we've been out of the office since March the 8th. We were acquired on May the 1st. We were a minority-owned company that was fighting to provide opportunities, and Coupa took a chance on us and acquired us, which was a great experience. Rob, the CEO, and the entire team has been wonderful over there. But the other things that I would just call out during this time that we have to reflect on, or what are the good things that we've learned? We've learned also credit card debt is at an all-time low in the last 50 years. People have been not ringing up credit card debt. People have been paying off their bills, and that's a good thing. People are spending more time at home and getting to know their parents, saving money. There's some good things that have come out of that we have to I think, to Steve's point, there's good and bad, and we have to balance it both. We've lost a lot of lives, but what did we learn, and how have we grown? I think we've also recognized that there's a lot of inequality, and I'm going to couch inequality in this way. There's racial inequality, there's gender inequality, there's financial inequality, there's health inequality that we've all become aware of, and more especially disproportionately, people of color have been more affected by the coronavirus than any other group in this country, when we represent such a small portion of the population, but we represent a larger portion of the people who are not only sick, but dying and have died or passed away through this virus. So I think this raises the conversation and consciousness of us all as Americans. How are we taking care of our fellow man and woman? Because I believe inequality should be a topic that we should all, people with disabilities that are impacted because they had to stay at home. Are we thinking about how those people who are in wheelchairs are affected, are sick and are elderly? Look at our nursing homes and assisted living, with those families being totally devastated by not being able to have contact with their families during this time. So I think that, to me, the conversation as we go back to work is we have to start thinking about, what does equality amongst us looks like going forward, and how are we going to own that in our corporate environment? How are we going to own women, creating more opportunities for women? How are we going to have more flexible work schedules, where we have more unlimited PTO or flexible PTO so people can spend more time at home? What is our IT policy going to be going forward, so that we can allow there to be more flexibility with people working from home or staying at home? So to me, the conversation needs to pivot to, what did we learn, and how can we impact the future of our workplace with those key learnings? That's where it comes from me, because if we couch everything under race, we're going to miss a huge opportunity to bring a lot of people under the tent. I think that there's race is one part, but I think women are women in opportunities. I think our people with disabilities are another opportunity. I think we need to be thinking differently about the elderly going forward, and also, very important, how are we taking care of the health of our employees, providing health benefits and health opportunities so we can get more preventative health in our insurance plans, so our people are healthier. And so when we face an epidemic, a pandemic like what we're doing now, people are going to be healthier and to be able to get through it. So that, for me, is what I'm thinking about as I go through work, taking the good learnings that I've had, as well as the painful learnings that we've experienced over the last 90 days, and how can I do better as a leader moving forward to create better opportunities for myself, my family, and the people in the community that I live, work, and serve in.
And that's such a good point, because so often that we can dwell on the negative and get caught up in and that just is a self perpetuating, that we end up just lost in the negative and unable to see any possible benefits or where we're going. And and our business, one of our core, as a family business, which I explained earlier, is that, being third generation, one of our core values is that we are a family here. And within that family, as we all know about families, it's not all, doesn't mean that everything's great, but it does mean that we care for each other and that we're going to invest in each other and we're going to have each other's back at the end of the day. And within this family, within High Towers Petroleum Company and our affiliated companies, we have people who are Trump supporters. We have people who are libertarians. We have people who, of course, fall into the Democratic Party. Some don't even care about it. Some, are extremely passionate about it. So everybody, and in knowing that those exist, but also keeping the eye on the ultimate service of our customers, so that we are able to provide impact and build up in our community, and focusing on values rather than politics helps to keep us aligned and not fall into that trap. As a business leader, as a now 40-year-old black male, how I have to put myself in the shoes of a 60-something white male who has lived his life, never had to listen to a young black male ever. And so I have to put myself in his shoes in order to be able to lead him properly and to do what's best for the collective of our business. I can't, now's my chance to,
get revenge. Right? And I'm so sorry, because this is such an important topic to me.
Lost your sound again. Okay, it's okay. We can. Jason, why don't you go?
Yep. No, I really think, Daryl and Steven and Tawana, I think are making really solid points. I feel like we, as a society, we really do focus on, the negative. It's the easiest, right? You look at mainstream media, you look at this, and we automatically pivot right to the worst in situations, right? And as business leaders, we try to mitigate, risks, as well as some of these, factors and fear. And I feel like fear is a real hard point that, as we dive into this, and where COVID started really bringing a lot of this to light, was the fear and focusing on that. Where, coming from a military background, we were bred to, we understand the fear, but we understand that collectively, with touching these certain points and having that empowerment, whether that's to my brother, to my sisters, to the people right beside us in war-struck countries, that we put that aside, because then we focus on the ultimate mission and the ultimate, layout that this could end up becoming. So if we see some of these inequalities around, race, well, we shouldn't start letting fear be the ultimate factor behind how we then determine the workforce and how we look at approaching these things anymore. I think that's an old way of thinking. And I feel like we could really bring this to light and say, with the health, with financials, with the disabilities, with, race. I think we eliminate the race factor. When it all comes down to it, we are all together in this to win this. And if we started looking at in a different light, I feel like we could really positively have that impact and not be afraid of these race wars or certain inequalities or the powers that have been or some of this shift. I think, in my personal opinion, diversity is what makes us strong. I think that's what makes us strong in the workforce and in some of these environments, because there's some of, I have strengths to some people that might have weaknesses, but then but that's a vice versa play. I have weaknesses. Some of my brothers and sisters have some solid strengths too. And I think if we start looking at these things from a management perspective and leading in that cause, I feel we could really, empower the generations. I feel like the number one key around this is education. I feel like educating around some of these policies and politics and what it really comes down to could end up bridging these gaps.
So I'm hoping that you guys,
Yeah.
I've switched devices 3 times. Can you all hear me?
Yeah.
All right, we're going to roll with the way that we have to roll. And I swear, if this device mutes me as well, I'm thinking that somebody's up to no good. But I want it because it's such an important topic, right? And I think that there are so many people that are afraid to say or even broach whether they support the president or whether they don't support the president because of all that is going on. And so the question I beg to differ is, oftentimes when a person finds out which side you're on, the judgment automatically happens. And so, Stephen, I do want to come back to just being in a position where you have to lead regardless of what or whom that person supports, because at the end of the day, you have an organization to run. You know, one thing that we all have in common is we have families, we have bills, we have a life outside of work. And so what are some tidbits that you can give, especially as sensitive as the climate is? One of the items you mentioned was coming back to values. Well, sometimes it's difficult to come back to values when a person is automatically assumed that you don't have values because of where you stand in politics.
Yeah, and again, that burden, that burden of leadership, and to be able to, is sometimes swallow some things that you wouldn't otherwise swallow. I came directly to this business, which is the oil and gas industry, which, as many of you can imagine, is a highly conservative white male dominated industry, and came right off the Obama campaign. So I was just it died in the fire, just firebrand liberal, you couldn't tell me nothing. And it was all, right off the campaign, it was just off rip. I was ready to debate. And so some of that was mentorship, my father said, hey, sometimes you gotta dial that back, like always stick up for what you believe, but sometimes you've got to, and so to be in conversations where, people that I rely on in the business, and, both my employees, my suppliers, my circle, and Daryl and I belong to an organization of, 100 plus CEOs around the Cincinnati area. And we're the only two African-American in an entire organization. It's an organization that is very valuable to us. And that we believe in and is helpful, and but at all times, the only two African Americans in the room, and it is just that's not something new for me. It's something that since I was in kindergarten that I've learned to adapt and move through, and we've just got to know what our purpose is, know what are we trying to accomplish at any given moment. And if what I am trying to accomplish is trying to build my business or, build equity, which will ultimately do more for my community than me popping off at the mouth because I don't agree with somebody, then I've got to make those choices, consistently, so that I can, building this business and building wealth within our community is more important than proving a point, at many times. And talk about equality, but we also need to talk about equity. How do we, I don't want us in this fight, in this moment that we have, we've gotten Aunt Jemima's name changed. We've gotten statues torn down. We've gotten, this flags removed. But how many businesses have we invested in? How many children are being educated? How many, where is that conversation? And do not leave that off the table. And do not let that, don't be patronized by some of these issues. Yes, those symbols they have their importance, but they're not going to feed our community, and they're not going to advance us to the point where we need to.
I think that was so well said. I think oftentimes that we get so fired up and passionate about a specific topic that we forget the overall objective at hand. So with that being said, Jason, I'm going to come back into your neck of the woods because one, military background, entrepreneur, you're on the other side of the aisle. So I'm very curious, especially after having to get to know you in a very, very quick manner yesterday. Tell me what it's like sometimes to have a commitment to diversity, have business initiatives that support all, but not always having the same views with some of those that you're looking to partner with.
Oh, 100%. And I think, it's a challenge, to be honest. I mean, and people think that it might be an easy, hurdle to climb, but it's not one, it's all. It's all of us together in that same mindset that would end up creating it. So I would have to take part where my learning experience is in Afghanistan. In Afghanistan and running rural operations out there, it was night and day. There's different barriers to even then that play into effect, language barriers that come in into that effect, different lifestyles and changes. People come from different ways of life and different upbringings, but that shouldn't separate us. That should empower us. In some of these areas, we looked at that as we're not there as a dominant force. We were there to help grow and mentor and to show that there is a better way to do certain things, to bring in lighting and generators, to just have light for schools, where now they have actual schools to be able to teach some of the foundation. I really believe, and I mentioned this earlier, is education. I think, being a soldier and doing that, I was constantly being educated on the culture. And when I put myself in those shoes and tried to understand where that culture was coming from, it really put me in a position of how to develop that and bridge those gaps as a soldier, where I wouldn't be, holding my gun. I would put my, weapons away, strip that, take off my gear and stuff and get onto that level where we're not here to enforce, we're here to empower. And there's a lot kind of around that where I feel like there's a kind of a disconnect there in a lot of ways from that point of view. But I think that's where the socioeconomics of war-torn countries, really give that insight. And then coming back to America, where we're out there protecting my brothers and sisters, and I can look to my right, and it doesn't matter whether you're black, green, blue, indifferent, whether you were working for NATO forces or German forces or Russian forces, we all were in the missions together. Because the ultimate mission was to come home, to be safe, and to do good by helping people that were under certain types of regimes and control. And I feel like then coming back to America, it put a different spin where now I see my brothers and sisters fighting against each other when we should be empowering each other and going after a strategic, social mission.
Wow, that's pretty deep. That is pretty deep. And why so many people fear that we are going to have a civil war right here in our own country. It is really intriguing to me so often, especially those that are in other countries that are observing it all, that don't understand why we have not been able to figure this out. Not that racism doesn't exist in other parts of the world. Clearly, we know that it does, but for whatever reason, it has reared its ugly head in America in a way that is pretty stifling. So I want to, Daryl, Stephen mentioned something about having to have the capacity to basically have empathy for an older white man that has never had to listen or take direction from an African-American male leader. Tell us what that's like in your work environment.
Sure. And thank you, Stephen. That was insightful. And thank you, Jason. Also, me being a Navy veteran as well, having served back in Desert Storm. So,
so a little bit there, Darren. So you know what it's like.
Very different generation. So a few years older than everyone here, but here's where that I'll share my point of view in this regard. In the Navy, all I saw was blue. And I'm going to be honest, to me, democracy is not a flippant word. Democracy is how we live. Democracy is how we take care of one another. So I don't care who is in the White House. I support democracy in the United States. I may not agree. And I'll have to always agree. Steve and I see each other all the. We don't have to always agree, but he is still my friend. If he needs something, I'm going to be there for him. My fellow American, I believe, no matter who's in the White House or who's at head Speaker of the House, or who is the head of the Senate, I support democracy. And if I want people to respect people of color that are in the White House or in those seats, I didn't have to be a good example of respecting and honoring other people that are not of color when they're in those positions. So that is my responsibility. And so when I lead, I think one of the greatest books I've ever read was The Paradox of Leading. The paradox of leading or leadership is accountability. Accountability starts with me. And as leaders, we're always under construction. We are always under construction. We have to be humble about that. As part of one of the lessons about COVID that I hope everyone on here has learned, at least I have learned, there's a lot of things that was totally out of my control. Every couple of weeks, I had to tell my people, I didn't know we were coming back to office or when we were going to come back. That was totally out. Think of it as a leader being totally out of control. So it wasn't at that point about black or white or old or young. It was people like, am I going to be able to feed my family? Am I going to be able to put food on the table, keep my house or keep my car? People were concerned mostly at that point about how am I going to function and take care of myself and my responsibility. So as a leader, I have moved way beyond the point of, in the Navy was really a good teacher, and is that we're a team no matter what your age are, what's your age, what your ethnicity is, what demographic you came from. We're all a team, and it's up to me. If I show preference to people who are younger or older or a different ethnicity, then I'm going to destroy the team. So I have to be a great example of a leader and take accountability. If I want my team to reflect teamwork, then I have to be the first to appreciate everybody on the team and their differences. So that's how I approach leadership. It's my responsibility to be a shining example of accountability. And sometimes accountability is forgiving. Sometimes accountability is finding a solution versus finding a problem. And sometimes accountability is saying, as a leader, I'm always under construction and I made a mistake. It's not, or the people under me may have made a mistake, and it's not about whose fault it is. I take full responsibility. So I take full responsibility for no matter who's on my team, where they came from, what their ethnic background is, what their beliefs are. It is my responsibility to hold myself accountable to leading.
I think that's a great point, Joe. I mean, I think you hit, the nail on the head in a lot of senses where, adapting and overcoming this, that's what they instill through the military. And when you look at these, racial and certain backgrounds or age gaps, it's how do we end up becoming that leading and really taking that precedent to show the younger generation, that you can step into that leading position. You can step into those, forums and have that voice for most people that don't want to show that voice or are afraid of speaking up and showing those voices.
Right. Totally. And again, it starts with, Jason, to your point, it starts with humility from me. It starts with everything starts with me. And if I'm not willing to admit the ways that I'm under construction, I can let my own biases and my preferences get in the way of others. And I think sometimes we have to admit what our own derailers are, and how we can derail others from feeling a part of our family. As Steve said, we have to recognize before we find fault in each other, we have to identify what our own faults are and our own challenges and opportunities are. Because if we take those blinders off, we may start to see there is more good in our fellow man and the people around us and fellow women, versus being closed off and having rose-colored glasses that we're only going to see what we want to see because we're not willing to interrogate our own beliefs. I think if we start closer to home as leaders, going back to the workplace and saying, what did I learn? Because I don't know about you guys, I learned a lot more about my family over the last 90 days. I learned a lot more about myself. I learned a lot more about cooking. getting my daughter ready for college and doing a lot of things differently. But the most important thing I learned is there's sometimes it's health and good health in having a personal reset of my own belief when you take out the factor that you have to control things.
Well said, Daryl. That was really well said.
You know, I know that there are people that are watching, and they have the way that they feel, right? They have the way that they feel, and they're coming back to work. Some of them are really figuring out the virtual meeting space, and they're leaving when people voice certain views or concerns with a lot of judgment, a lot of judgment. But the advice that you all are giving from coming from a place of leadership, utilizing empathy, trying to remember more about what we have in common and what we should be looking at as far as fellow Americans, as opposed to what our differences are. I certainly do hope that those that are tuning in are taking note. It is no easy feat when you have people that are extremely passionate about one side of the aisle or the other. But clearly, many of you are in positions with very successful organizations and have been able to put a lot of that aside. I am curious, Stephen, on your end, I know you mentioned in the past you all have brought in individuals to provide trainings or lead discussions. Is there a sense of what people might look at as kind of irony that you all are a Black-owned firm, have charted your own success, but still recognize the need to bring in others when it comes down to having these types of conversations?
Absolutely. So if we think that breaking this all apart, sending people home, buying laptops, internet, all that, if we think that was hard, learning how to use these platforms, we ain't seen nothing yet. Bringing it back together is going to be the biggest challenge of our lives, because we're coming back together in a new world, a world that didn't exist, before we went home. And we all, as business leaders, have different skills, but sometimes we do need to bring in somebody else because we are part of that conversation too. We are part, sometimes we can be part of the problem, sometimes we can be part of it, but those pieces of the puzzle that need to be fit back together, it is good to have some outside perspective to help facilitate those conversations. And diversity is typically thought of in Black and white, but there's age diversity, there's diversities of personalities, there's sexuality, there's experiences, there's backgrounds. So when we went through that a couple years ago, and so our initial, about 5 years ago when we went through this initially, our challenge was we were a growing company, and that had largely been built, family board, people who have been with us for 20 years, blah, blah, so. We had a tight-knit group, but then as we grew, we knew that we had to start to bring in individuals, with industry experience, fuel industry experience specifically. So that's going out, bringing in new people, going out, then so every time you bring, it's like, you bring in somebody from the outside. Hey, I know more about this than you do. And you have, old versus new. You have accounting versus sales. So all these tensions, if not done properly. So we wanted to say, time out, and you're recognizing your culture. You've got recognizing that you need help. That, like Daryl said, that humility to know that maybe things are a little. You can pitch in the air, and that's not a good way to do business. That is not going to allow our business to be successful. In fact, that's going to kill us because our customers can feel it, our suppliers can feel it. People out on the street talk bad about us if our cultural culture stinks, then we stink. And so you have to be willing to open your eyes and say, let's, if you need help, you help. And it's not always a bad thing, but as we transition into what's next, we have to be open to let's plan this. How we're going, people been at home, who knows what they've been thinking, because, the world has changed, and now we're trying to bring it back together, and can't expect, the worst decision that we can make is that it's going to be the same as it was. That we need to put that out of our thinking. Going back to the way it was does not exist, and we would be foolish to believe that it does.
And to that point, if I could add what you said, Steve, we have to give ourselves permission to say we don't know. I mean, how many times do we get up in the morning and try to have it all figured out and all? I'm sorry, it's taught us a very valuable lesson. You're not in control. Having a mask on and the vulnerability of walking around all day with a mask on, going to the grocery store, or picking up items from the local. I think that, to your point, as we go back to work, Tawana, again, back to that, why are we here? What are we doing? And what are we talking about? One of the most valuable lessons is we're going to have to learn as leaders. We don't have all of the answers. As Steve talked about, bringing other people in, having the humility to recognize that when we go back to work, we're going to be figuring things out very differently. And our teams are going to teach us. And they're going to say, you know what, to be very honest, they're going to say, I've been home for 4, 5, 6 months, and I've been doing a really good job. Why can't I stay at home? So as a leader, have you thought that through? What are your policies going to look like? How are you going to interrogate your own fears where, like Steve said, well, what are you doing at home? We got to be able to get a hold of you. You guys know those fears. Let's just talk about it as leaders. We got to be transparent about it. But then, are you prepared with your HR teams and for your supervisors and directors of HR when an employee says or a teammate says, but Steve, but Jason, but Daryl, I have been doing my job efficiently and effectively from home. I would like to consider X, or I would like for you to consider X. I think that we need to get prepared to be comfortable being uncomfortable in those situations that are going to interrogate our own personal beliefs about the new workplace and what it will look like in the future. Because I think telecommuting is going to be now a part of the negotiations when we go back to work, and people are going to really interrogate, I want to work from home 3 days a week, or I don't want to come back to the office, or I want to change my office dynamic in my work life. I think, Tawana, that's going to be a big conversation with leaders that we got to go back and be prepared for the openness of that conversation and where that conversation may lead us.
Absolutely. That don't want to come back because of everything that has transpired. Back because of everything that has
transpired. I don't know what just happened, but
I think somebody just came up. Tawana, are you still there? We got 2 Tawanas.